The young girl seen in this 1970 photo is Jeannie Wiley of California, otherwise known as the feral child, barely able to walk at age 13. For her entire life, her father had abused her viciously, keeping her in a makeshift straitjacket and tying her to a children's toilet in a locked room all day. When she made any sound or did anything he didn't like, he'd growl and bare his teeth at her like a dog. Under such brutal conditions, Wiley never learned how to walk or speak. When this creepy photo was taken at a hospital just after she was rescued, her life inside a series of abusive institutions was only beginning. Her whereabouts today are unknown. Anatoly Moskvin is a Russian former journalist, college professor, and self-dubbed necropolist with expert knowledge of cemeteries. For years, his hobby of collecting dolls hid a macabre obsession that drew upon his particular interests, digging up the dead and making dolls out of their corpses. After making his human dolls, he kept them in his home as his companions and lovers. "I kissed her once, then again, Moskvin wrote about one of his dolls, made from the body of an 11-year-old girl. Police finally caught Moskvin in 2011, after years of increasing suspicion at the growing number of desecrated graves in his home city of Nizhny Novgorod. When they searched his home, they found 26 life-size dolls, or rather, mummified corpses, scattered throughout. Truck stop killer. Robert Ben Rhodes may have killed more than 50 women while driving commercial trucks back and forth across America throughout the 1970s and 80s. But perhaps his most chilling murder is the one believed to be his last. Just before Rhodes murdered 14-year-old Regina K. Walters in an Illinois barn in early 1990, he took a series of photos of her cowering in fear as he moved in for the kill. Authorities found this photo and a collection of others like it inside Rhodes' home after he was finally caught several months later. While countless attempts at traversing Niagara Falls have been made over the years, Robert Overaker had an admirable reason for attempting his crossing: to raise awareness for the homeless. Unfortunately, his October 1995 attempt didn't go as planned. Overaker planned to ride through the water on a jet ski, and then open the parachute on his back as he went over the edge and let his vehicle plummet down into the river below the falls. But when his parachute failed to open, it was the 39-year-old Californian who fell 180 feet to his demise. "It's like hitting cement," said Niagara Parks police officer Thomas Dettenbeck of Overaker's last moment alive. "I don't really think people respect the power of the falls." On August 6, 1945, the United States of America dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. And for some of the approximately 80,000 people who lost their lives, only a nuclear shadow remained. When the bomb detonated at 1,900 feet above the city center, the subsequent explosion caused temperatures of 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit to annihilate nearly everything within 1,600 feet of the bomb's blast zone. Almost anything and anyone within a mile was destroyed. The bomb's light and heat were so extreme that they bleached the city's exposed surfaces, except in places where an unsuspecting person shielded the building or sidewalk or bridge from the blast with their own body in their final moments alive. Hundreds of young girls and women who worked in American watch factories during the 1920s were exposed to so much radium that they came home glowing in the dark. The prolonged exposure to radium used in the luminous paint that coated the watch faces caused their vertebrae to collapse, their jaws to swell up and fall off, and their lives to slowly end in agony while battling cancer. The infamous house in Amityville, New York, where Ronald DeFeo Jr. slaughtered his parents and 4 siblings, as seen just hours after the murders. On November 13, 1974, DeFeo stalked from room to room and shot his sleeping family dead with a .35 caliber rifle. The Amityville murders were said to leave the house haunted, a story that eventually inspired the Amityville Horror. Though skeptics have since called the haunting story into question, DeFeo claimed that otherworldly voices emanating from the house itself ordered him to kill. Captured inside the Amityville horror house in 1976, this creepy vintage photo remains one of the most chilling paranormal images of all time. After the DeFeo murders, the house's next owner, George Lutz, claimed that the home was haunted and called in famed paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren to help. One night, the automatic camera they'd set up on the second floor caught what appeared to be a ghostly boy staring back. Some believe it is the ghost of young John DeFeo, who was murdered in the house by his brother years earlier. Few creepy old photos are more disturbing than those captured inside the mental institutions of decades and centuries past. Seen here is one of countless patients being restrained in a French mental institution in 1900. It's unclear what condition this unfortunate patient suffered from. At the time, people could get committed for anything from depression and shell shock to schizophrenia and learning disabilities. With the abuses of patients like this one happening behind closed doors, we'll surely never know the extent of the trauma that these people suffered inside the institutions of old. Members of the Heaven's Gate cult believed they were destined for another world, where they would transcend to the next level in human evolution, when 39 of them killed themselves en masse inside their California home on March 26, 1997, indoctrinated by cult leader Marshall Applewhite, who claimed that a spaceship following the Hale-Bopp comet would transport them to a utopian planet. Devotees eagerly followed his instructions. On that fateful day in March, the 39 cultists consumed a mixture of barbiturates and applesauce and washed it down with vodka. Group by group, bags were tied over their heads to ensure asphyxiation. Applewhite himself was the 37th to die. They were found wearing matching Nike sneakers and Heaven's Gate away team armbands a few days later. This expressionless waxwork dummy, flanked by 2 student nurses in training, was captured by photographer Anthony Armstrong Jones in 1968 for his book assignments. There's no ominous story behind this photo, but it's certainly one of the creepiest vintage pictures of the 20th century. Armstrong Jones, meanwhile, went on to have enormous personal and professional success. His photography captured the imagination of millions, while he himself captured the heart of Princess Margaret and became the first Earl of Snowdon after they married in 1960. For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more, I cannot control myself. On December 10, 1945, William Aarons left this note scrawled in lipstick on the wall of Frances Brown's Chicago apartment. Just before writing this message, Aarons brutally stabbed Brown to death and left a knife sticking out of her neck. Aarons became known as the Lipstick Killer and took one more victim before police finally caught him 6 months later. Keith Sapsford was just 14 years old when he stowed away on an airliner, fell out of the wheel well, and plummeted to his death on February 22, 1970. His harrowing final moments were captured by photographer John Gilpin, who happened to be casually snapping photos while waiting to board his flight. The Australian teenager had just run away from boarding school and longed to see the world. After sneaking onto the tarmac of Sydney International Airport, he hid inside a Tokyo-bound plane, but fell to his death soon after takeoff. All my son wanted to do was to see the world, his father Charles Sapsford later recalled. He had itchy feet. His determination to see how the rest of the world lives has cost him his life.